Here we go. First, welcome to everyone that's here, and let me just say a quick happy Valentine's Day. ISD would like to welcome you to this month's ISD webinar, 4 Quick Wins in Pricing Management. One housekeeping item, as you think of questions, please enter them into either the chat box or the Q&A box. We will address them as we go. Our presenters today are Senthil and Pradip. Pradip is passionate about using a combination approach, data-driven and training, to help people drive profitable growth. He has 15 plus years of experience assisting hundreds of companies directly while co-authoring 7 inspiring books that are consistently among the NAW Institute for Distribution Excellence's top 10 bestsellers. His customer stratification method, listed in Information Week as one of 20 great ideas to steal in 2014, and pricing optimization technique, listed in MDM 2008 as a highly effective way to approach distributor pricing, are widely adopted throughout the distribution industry. He holds a doctorate in business analytics. Senthil is passionate about driving profitable growth through analytics. Being an engineer at heart, he brings a quantitative approach to business challenges, leading to unbiased solutions that optimize shareholder value. Having deployed best practices across hundreds of distributors over the past 2 decades, he believes in the critical role of people in making or breaking analytics. Hence, practices capability-driven approach that integrates people, process, technology, performance, capitals. His real-world solutions and frameworks, shared with thousands through his 7 best-selling books at NAW, have been praised for being practical, relevant, and highly actionable, the kind of guidance you can use Monday morning. He holds a doctorate in distributor value proposition from Texas A&M University. At the end of this webinar, you will be able to, when you view your data through the lenses of customer, supplier, and product, your 4 quick wins in pricing can be easily achieved. The wins will arise from the actions. 1, seal customer level margin erosion. 2, reduce the cost to serve customers. 3, segment suppliers to improve margins. And 4, boost your product level profitability. Now I'll turn it over to Senthil and Pradip. Sorry.
Thank you, Janet. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Senthil and I are glad to be part of this session, and we look forward to speaking with you and answering your questions. So before we begin, one thing we want to put out there is pricing doesn't have to be complicated. So what happens is most of pricing, what we're going to talk about, takes us back to the fundamentals. It's going to address discipline, because often we have to look at the process, take an introspection into the process before we start looking at the actual pricing process itself. What happens is the pricing, the margin that we see is always visible. That's tangible. That's a number that we see on a day-to-day basis. So when the margin drops, our first instinct is, let's go increase the price, or let's turn back, talk to the supplier, and start buying better. But what it does is it just delays the process. We are delaying the process to address what the root cause is, and rather looking at the effect. What happened is pricing. So let's go forward with pricing, and often we end up with limited success. So what we're going to talk today is fundamentals. And to us, when we look at pricing, most of the things, all the 4 things that we're going to look at are most of the common sense approach. So what happens is when you look at one thing that's simple, okay, we have to look at gross margin. The last year versus this year. Last year, the customer paid 24%. This year, the customer paid 23%. That's simple. Okay, there is a 100 basis point difference, or a 1% change that dropped from last year to this year. So what happened? When you start looking at it for every single customer and layering multiple products, multiple geographies, and multiple salespeople, it gets out of hand pretty quickly. So we have to really understand where the process is not sustainable when it comes to pricing, and what we can do to fix it quickly, because all we're going to talk about in this session is pricing doesn't have to be a surgery. Most companies, when they go into pricing, they bring in a huge technology product and they hope that it will address everything. It's like doing surgery when you're already bleeding and you need to really stop the bleeding and put a band-aid in place. So we're going to talk about those quick wins, what you can do immediately with less dependence on technology. So before we begin, the first thing we want to understand is what is actually happening? What is the root cause when it comes to pricing? Why are companies struggling? And why have several companies not been able to take advantage of information that they have in the system consistently? On this screen, what you're looking at is different dots. And each of this dot represents a price, and each dot also represents a customer. So you've got about 30 customers in this graph. And each of the customer, in this case, buys the same product. It comes from an industrial distributor located out of South Florida in Miami, and every single customer is located within a 10-mile radius. And it's the same product. So as you look at it, there is a wide dispersion in band. So if you want to put the boundaries or understand what the variation of price is, the average is about 63.87. The minimum comes in at 54.70, and the maximum is 75.90. So as we go through this process, if we ask this group or go around the room and asking, okay, what are the top two reasons that you think that the price is so spread out? And this is one of the top moving products and from their key supplier. They do make a lot of rebate on this. So the first thing comes to mind is volume. Yes, maybe the one customer right here, the customer right at the bottom over here, I mean, they should be buying more volume. I mean, they can't get this best price if they're not doing high volume. And the second thing is, yeah, we're providing a lot of service. I mean, this customer is difficult. They buy a lot of volume from us. I mean, they've been doing business with us for 5-10 years. And these two always tends to be the top two reasons as to why you are seeing this kind of dispersion. But taking a deeper look, what is actually happening is every single box that you see over there is a salesperson. It's a salesperson who are defining the margins. So if you take a step back and look at distribution, the process of sales management and pricing autonomy or level of pricing at the sales field level is so intertwined that there is no sales management in place. We tell our sales teams or customer facing folks, we tell them, let's get the sale and figure out a way to make money later. So what happens is in the absence of that strong value message or for the lack of sales management, price often becomes and translates into a value. So when we cannot provide a strong value, we default to price and customers always look at price. So that is what is happening. So before you address any pricing initiative long term, you have to really separate the pricing autonomy process with the sales management. And that's what we're going to attempt to do as we go through these 4 quick wins to give you a much more clearly defined and simple way to isolate these two processes while establishing the value that connects the sales management and pricing. When I say sales management, what it means is often we don't tell our salespeople what we want them to do. And that's mainly because we don't know what we want them to do. We tell them, go after the sales, the customer is important. Do we give them the tools? Do we give them enough data to provide confidence? Okay, for this customer, you can price between these two price points. Go between 20% margin and 26% margin. That's what I want you to work with. So if that is what, as a sales management, we provide them, give them enough data to prove that, okay, that is something that you can comfortably play with, 9 out of 10 salespeople often go for it because right now they don't have that confidence in the data, confidence in sales management, and confidence that they should be using that information. So that is the first step. And without addressing this disconnect between pricing management and pricing autonomy and sales management, no pricing initiative, however simple or complicated it is, it will not work. So we have to recognize that pricing autonomy is what is currently a sales management tool. Companies say that pricing autonomy, yeah, sales management is pretty much pricing. We give them so much control so they can pretty much do what they want. What happens is we have as many number of messages, value messages in the market as the number of salespeople that we have out there. So this is something that we have to recognize, address, and figure out a way to really get around this because if you're going to compete with the online competition, pricing is going to be transparent for a lot of products. Of course, there is value distribution. is got a lot of value there. But when price becomes so transparent, then what is our sales team going to go out there with? So the value messages should be very clear, and the pockets of pricing opportunities should be recognized within short succession. So this is where we want to begin with, and then we'll dive right into the 4 quick wins. So what we're going to do is we're going to the first 2 wins are going to be pretty straightforward, pretty easy to do. You can do it immediately. The other 2 things, you're going to do it over a period of 3 to 6 months. So it gives you a few steps to work on immediately. And then you also have a medium term and a long term goal, which not only makes it actionable, but also sustainable. So when we look at what matters to pricing, I mean, there are so many things that drive pricing. The market, things we can control that we cannot control. If you have supplies from overseas, the long lead times, the other international supply chain dynamics. So there are several things that come into play. But what can we control and what can we influence? It boils down to 5 drivers. I mean, we've worked with about more than 500 distributors on pricing across varying lines of trade, large and small, starting from $5 million distributors to about $1 billion distributors. All of them no different. I mean, from a pricing perspective, they are no different. They have more capability to do things, but in terms of execution, everybody is in the same boat. So as you look at it, what we need to look at is where is the opportunity and how do we take advantage of it? So when it comes to pricing, there are 5 fundamental questions. The first thing is, who do we sell it? Who do we sell to? The second thing is, what do we sell? A product, service, or a combination? Third thing is, what does it cost us to buy? Because we need to know how much it really costs us to procure, because only then we know how much cost we need to make in order to cover for that cost, and of course, make money on top of that. The fourth thing is, how often do customers buy it? Because we need to know what the buying pattern is, because if there's only one customer going to buy it once a year, I don't want to invest a whole lot of money unless that customer is one of my top customers or I see a strong value in those customers. And the last thing is, how much margin do we currently make? Because without understanding what we make, we've already set a precedence in the marketplace. As a distributor, if you're charging 20%, 15%, or 25% in terms of what's going out there, we've already set certain expectations. So can we jump right away to 30%, 32%, depending on different industries and product categories? It's going to be difficult, but we have to take baby steps and move north gradually. Of these 5 variables, the reason why it is critical is it's simple. It's simple to understand. Everyone in the organization understands the customer, the supplier, and all these are data driven and nobody can dispute the fact it's all tracked routinely in your system. The second thing is it's reliable. Everything that goes to a transaction, what the customer pays for, how much margin you make, it's there, it's reliable, nobody can dispute it. The third thing is information is available. Every single ERP system, no matter how big or how small, a niche or a very sophisticated player, everybody's got this information. And last thing, above all, it's quantifiable. There is no high, medium, or low. There is no huge. There is no, we're going to miss that large sale. It all comes down to numbers. We can put numbers to it. And when we tie all these two together, there are 3 variables or 3 of these factors that really stand out. The first thing, who do we sell to? The customer, product, and supplier. So when it comes to pricing, if you look at the overall pricing, you've got the price, how much you sell it for, which is inclusive of how much it costs to procure, which is your supplier, right? How much it costs to procure from the supplier. What do you procure? Your product and or service, a combination thereof. And who do you sell to? Your customer. So these 3 metrics pretty much control most of your pricing process. Everything outside that is either subjective or it's one time or cannot be quantified immediately. Yes, the relationship is important. Everything is important. The value the customer adds, the potential is important. So what we're trying to do is we want to get the data do as much of it can do possible. And we're not trying to replace the pricing autonomy. We're not trying to replace pricing autonomy. What we're trying to do is provide more information, provide more science to the pricing process so that the sales team can bring their experience and expertise that the system cannot replicate to bring it together. In short, if you use data or technology systems, they are an inch wide and a mile deep. They can track information for a few variables, but they can go back 4 or 5 years for a long period of time. On the other hand, as humans, we are a mile wide and inch deep. What happens last week or what happened 2 weeks ago is pretty much going to dictate our pricing process. So we want to take that out, take the emotions out of it. So it's more like a science assisted art approach. And in this case, we are not, two things we are proposing is we're not proposing to fire any customers. That's not the intent. Every customer, we have to suit our business model to do business with every single customer, because right now we have one size fits all. It has to differ according to customers. The second thing is we are not trying to replace the sales process or salesperson. It is something that needs to happen with the data that we have, which we are not currently leveraging. So from here, we're going to dive into the first quick win. The first quick win is you're going to close the margin gap. Look for margin gaps or opportunities at a customer level. The second thing, we're going to move from measuring customers purely based on sales and gross margin dollars to a few set of additional metrics. Again, those are available, reliable, and quantifiable to create some kind of scorecard that you can use to improve revenue and profitability simultaneously. The third thing and third wins and fourth, they're going to go into the product and supplier. The first thing that we want to look at is, it's simple. Look at all the customers with annual sales. Look at all your customers, add up all the sales, and identify customers with the annual sales below $12,000. I mean, these customers are not buying more than $1,000 a month average. So you might be a different size of distributors. We could have a mix of $10 million distributors versus $100 million distributors. So the $12,000 could vary, but a rule of thumb is, okay, $12,000 a year, if they're not buying, we have to take another look at it. So what I'm going to show an example in terms of what an industrial distributor did. But as you look at this, this is something that we see quite often. If you take your top 25 customers, you've got your top 25 customers. This comes from a company that's out in the West Coast. They've got about 10 locations. They cover up until Phoenix, and they do have a new operation in New Mexico. So this is for one of their locations. They have one of their, not the largest locations, I would say 3 or 4 in the mix. So this location, it's got these 25 customers, top 25 customers. The average margin of the top 25 customers comes in at 33%. And you can see that very significantly. The lower being about 20% right here, and then you've got 41 over here, and you see the corresponding sales. Now, we filtered out the customers that provide revenue below $12,000. And if you look at these customers, some of these customers are enjoying better margins than the top customers. As you look at it, you can see the difference. So first thing is really identify what is going on here, because if what is happening is these customers are flying under the radar. They're flying under the radar, nobody's watching them. So what ends up happening is we make all the money here on the left with these customers, and then we give the money away right here. So these customers get the best price and the best service possible, and that's what's happening. The first thing is to really look at your top 25 customers and then compare it to customers below $12,000 or $5,000, whatever your benchmark is, look at that. And that is your first opportunity, a quick win. So what happens after this? The second step is this company went about the whole process. They said, we are going to choose 7 of those locations. They left one particular state out of it. They said, we have unique situation when it comes to competition. So they picked 7 locations. And in location 3, what they did is location 3 had a revenue of about 15.6 million, margin is 33%. So what they did is they looked at all customers below $12,000 in revenue and looked at those that had margin below 28%, all customers below 28%. So their logic was if they were able to move all the customers from 28% to 33%, close the gap in terms of margin, it creates a potential of about $1.12 million. Again, we know that in reality, it's difficult to attain 100%. So they went through different scenarios, and in 3 months, with minimal change in the overall process, what they were able to achieve is, so this table that you're going to see, what you see on this is, if they achieve 100%, in other words, if they're able to move all customers from 28% to 33%, their revenue would go up to 16.7 million. And the delta, I mean, the differential that comes purely from pricing is 1.1 million, which would take the margin for these set of customers to about 37.4, overall 37.4. But in reality, we know it's not possible. So they settled it at 30% is what they ended up getting, which was move the margin from 33% to 34.4%, a 140 basis point improvement with minimal change in the overall process within 3 months. So that's the quick win. This is where you would like you should start, which is easy to understand, and you're really going to benchmark the smaller customers with the large customers and look at what the potential is. The second win is we have to look at customers beyond purely sales, volume, and margin. I mean, there are a lot of factors that really determine the price. There's a huge component called as cost to serve. How much does it cost to do business with a particular customer? That is very critical. And some of the metrics that companies are starting to track on a consistent basis. I mean, these days, if you talk to 5 companies, 4 out of 5 companies track this metric. Doesn't matter if they're a ceilings distributor or an automation distributor, fluid power distributor, electrical. I mean, this is pretty much table stakes. If you're not looking at customers using these 4 dimensions or lenses, it is a point of no return when it comes to pricing. So we looked at 14 distributors, and this is something that we went through as a group. These are a group of small to mid-sized distributors, and these are the metrics that they use to track the performance of customers. As you can see, they moved away from sales. It's not purely sales alone, it's sales trend. They look at the gross margin dollars, gross margin percentage, and so forth. So what we call this is the first attribute, we call them the buying power. So this is everything to do with the top line. The second thing is the alignment. In other words, are we aligned with what the customers want to do and vice versa? The third thing is profitability. And the fourth thing is cost to serve. So if you're not able to separate and look at the customers at different attributes, then you are not able to do a better job on pricing. We have to understand the customer purely from beyond volume and margin. So once you have all these metrics, I mean, all these, as you look at it, everything is quantifiable. Once you have the metrics, put all the metrics together and create a scorecard. And one way that we recommend doing it is, of course, it's not set in stone that you have to follow this, but the point is some kind of customer segmentation is vital. If you're going to price, you have to segment your customers. And something that we've seen quite a bit of success over the last 15 years is segmenting customers based on these 4 attributes. We have the first group of customers are the core customers. Without these customers, you cannot survive. And the numbers that you see on screen are typical results that we see on an average across different companies. 5 to 10% of the customers account for 80% of the net profit. You've got the opportunistic customers. They are very loyal to your competition. They buy from you when the competition is out of certain products. They are a small number of customers, but they're still profitable. The third group is the marginal group of customers. These are a large number of small volume customers. They are cherry picking and they want the best price and the best service possible. So this is where the opportunity is to look at doing business with these customers in a non-traditional way. Less touch points, having the inside sales deal with them, having the technical sales or CSRs deal with them. So this is a group that is primed up for looking at cost to serve significantly. And then you have the service trained customers who behave just like the core customers, but they are not as profitable as the core customers, but they control a significant portion of the volume. They are tricky to deal with. You have to work with them and understand what's going on before you really start putting some action items in place. So the first step here is really break your customers into different groups because each of these boxes require a different type of service. They require a different type of price point, and they require a different type of sales mindset. So once companies go through this exercise, this comes from a larger company. As you can see the revenue on top, this distributor is close to $100 million. And this is what they do. They've got the sales manager. They've got this ranked by sales rep. So every sales rep, they can choose their information, look at how many customers fall into these boxes, and they can target those specific customers and pick 5 to 10 customers for the entire year and come up with a sales action plan. And the level of detail, again, this is examples from other companies. You can go to as level of detail as possible, as much level of detail. So to give you an example, what really separates 2 customers? So we're going to take 2 customers that bring in the same amount of revenue. Both these customers rake in about $310,000, close to $310,000. So every customer is ranked as A, B, C, or a D according to each of these metrics. And you can see the level of importance, which metric is more important than the other from the previous 4 attributes. So if you look at the sales, product groups, number of orders and trend, it's pretty much a wash. I mean, each of these customers have, these two customers have the same rank. So from an alignment and revenue perspective, they're very comparable. They're good. I mean, there's still opportunities to improve, but overall, they're still comparable. So any action item over here, the only thing is the trend has dropped from the previous year. Can we influence it a little bit? But again, the customer is going to have to do more with it. But where the opportunity exists is when you look beyond sales. If you bring in the gross margin, yes, both of them are ranked as A in margin, but when you look at the margin percent, this customer brings in 34%, this customer brings in 22%. This customer takes 21 days to pay, average days to pay. This customer takes 37 days to pay. The average order size is 154. The average order size is 567. So if you take it back, tie these two together, this customer has placed 1877 orders in the year. That's a large number of orders. That's more than 4, 5, almost 5 orders a day. So they're placing a large number of orders. So this becomes a more meaningful point of discussion, because if the salesperson is talking to the customer, in this case, that's what happened. They said, yeah, you guys are placing too many orders, which is okay. I mean, we can get the product to you, but every time you place an order, it is expensive for you to place an order, receive it, as it is expensive for us to receive it and ship it to you. So there is a cost to serve discussion that benefits both the customer and the distributor. So our data should get us to having conversations like this and move the conversation away from price and focus on the value is going to be the fundamental way of getting away from the pricing inconsistency and putting a more process-based approach to pricing. Highlight the value, move the conversation away from price as much as possible, give the sales team more data to have the conversation with the customers. I'm going to skip the next slide. I'm sure Janet is going to share a copy of the presentation with you. This provides an example of how a scorecard was built for one of the industrial distributors. And this is the information that they share with the sales force. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Senthil to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, Senthil.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Pradip. So continuing our conversation, as you have seen, how we can get some quick wins from the customer perspective. Now comes the product perspective. The thing is, sometimes we will be able to make a decision in terms of product, but we want to know if it's a slow moving inventory, we want to know who we are selling to. So that is where we are coming into opportunity 3. So as a ceiling distributor, you may have a couple of thousands of stocking SKUs. So our idea is most of your ERP systems rank stocking items or the SKUs based on the volume, whether it is a A item, B item, C, and so forth. What we found is when you use just the volume aspect of the product performance, the profitability is ignored. So the goal here in opportunity 3 is how we can bring profitability at a SKU level, at item level, into our consideration so that we can identify the margin gaps that exist at a product level, very similar to what Pradip discussed at a customer level. So the approach comes from one of our best practice books that primarily looks at what we call as item stratification. So if we have a 5,000 different items, how do we decide which one of them are a A item and B item? The first one is inventory movement. This is primarily volume or velocity. What we define by velocity is how many orders you receive for a given item, which is different from what is the quantity you sell. So both volume and velocity help you determine the movement of the product. The second thing is the inventory profitability. How is it profitable? There are a couple of ways you can measure. The most common one is gross margin percentage. Gross margin percentage helps you understand, but the challenge is it varies widely across the stocking items. So we want to choose a metric that can be compared across the SKUs. So what we call this as a GIMROI. Some of you may be already using this metric. This is called gross margin return on inventory investment. So quickly, it is a ratio of a gross margin dollar or gross margin dollar and average inventory. So if you have an average inventory of $10,000 of an item, then if you got a gross margin over the year for an item, if you got a, let's say $20,000 gross margin dollar, that $20,000 divided over $10,000 average inventory would be 2 as a ratio, and you can express that as a percentage. That will be a 200% as a GIMROI. All it means is for every dollar you invest in that item, you get $2 return from that particular item. So when you measure this across the multiple SKUs, then we do a weighted approach to combine the movement and profitability to come up with the classification of A item, B, C, and D. So the key thing is you may already have a stratification rank, but does it include profitability measure? When you bring profitability and volume combined as a weighted approach, then you get a true picture of the performance of an item. So what do we do with this information? Obviously, identify the pricing opportunity. So when you do this, this is an example I am showing you from a heating, ventilating, air conditioning distributor. They have multiple product groups, as you see, compressors, controls, drivers, and other things. So for you, the example would be if you have a hydraulic seals, pneumatic seals, mechanical seals, gaskets, O-rings. So all of them would be each product group or category. So you would perform this stratification within the product category. And after you perform, you can find out, which you would know already, what is the gross margin percentage by product group. Our idea is take this product category level margin, compare that with the SKU margin and the rank, then identify for a slow moving item, can we increase the margin compared to the fast moving item. Let me show you an example. So here what we have done is, let's assume for one of your SKU, its a current margin is 20%. The group margin, which is the product group margin, whether it is any product category, what is the maximum margin achieved in that category? So now you have a gap between 20%, which is the baseline, and 40% is an example of what is the maximum achieved within that product category. So now you have an opportunity to raise the price on that particular item at varying levels. You can close the whole gap, increase the margin to 40%, or just take the 25%. But the key is which one of them is the right answer. So that's what we want to find. So now this is where we are going to bring stratification. So if I know A item is the fast moving and profitable, and the D item is a slow moving and not so profitable. So obviously that item does not turn faster. And if I know customer stratification, and if none of my core customers are buying, then I can increase my margin of a slow moving item to, example, 45%, which means I am increasing the price to around this level. And for a C items, I can increase a little bit lower. Why? Because as you increase the rank, all it means is the item is very popular. The customer is going to have a more visibility into the item. So that is why we want to increase more margin on the slow moving item compared to the fast moving item. If you really combine this with your customer stratification, that makes it so powerful, so that you know you are not raising the margin across the board, but selectively by product and customer. And here is the result of that particular HVAC distributor. Over a 12-week pilot that we have done, they identified and they wanted to go with only the low risk part of the inventory. So this was the inventory that they want to focus. So they have decided how much price they want to increase on their slow moving item. And what they have decided to go with is the D item was the low risk, and this is an item bought by their non-core customers. So they went ahead and increased the price and realized the gross margin as a bottom line over a 12-week pilot that we have done with them. So that is one of the approaches you can see you can do with the inventory stratification and customer stratification. The next one is, now that we have seen customer aspect, product aspect, and obviously if I am a distributor, the supplier is key stakeholder in my business. So how do we assess supplier performance today? Most of the time we go into the annual meeting and a negotiation meeting or quarterly review meeting with just the volume numbers, very similar to what we do with the customers and products. So again, what we are doing is, can we use your purchase order data, which is your PO data, and can we assess the supply chain performance of the suppliers? Why it matters? Because when they increase the lead time, and you as a distributor have to increase your safety stock to provide the same service level to your customers. So in other words, you are investing more for suppliers' inefficiency. But as a distributor, if I don't know how much I am investing more in working capital as a result of inefficiency of the supplier, I cannot communicate the same to supplier. So because as a distributor, I do not measure that today. So this is what we are going to see here. What we are going to do is volume, the spend, how much you do with that supplier. We all know that this is the volume-based one. But the second thing is what more important. Here, I want to know what is the lead time based on all the purchase orders and what is the variability of the lead time and how effectively they deliver. Do they deliver in one shipment, multiple shipments? Why it matters? When they do multiple shipments, I am incurring more cost to receive and put away and things like that. So the idea here is go beyond the volume and try to measure their performance, because you are already investing more inventory and incurring more cost to serve to account for their inefficiency, but we don't know because we are not measuring. When we measure this, very similar to customer profitability, we can put suppliers into 4 groups. The first group is the core group. This is the one where you spend a lot of volume with the supplier and their performance is also better. When I say performance, I mean by the delivery performance of and the lead time performance of the supplier. The second group is the one, your volume is not very high, but they are upcoming suppliers who do a very good delivery performance and lead time. Why it's important to differentiate? Because these are your future core suppliers. You want to identify and grow business with this supplier. The third category is the marginal supplier. These are your transactional supplier, low volume, low profitability, so the low delivery performance. These are not your non-core, these are not your core product categories, but you want to know how it is happening here so that you can gain better performance from them by communicating it. The last category is the most challenging one. Here it's a volume driver, meaning that this is a high volume, very similar to the core, but their profitability and performance is very, very low. So these are the suppliers very difficult to communicate because they are high volume, they may have more leverage, but they don't know about their performance. So this is where, as a distributor, you can share the performance and have that mutual collaboration, especially some of the large distributors, manufacturers don't know how their lead time is variable. So when you share this information, and especially when other distributors don't, obviously, guess what? You are going to get more attention from the service standpoint from the suppliers. The idea here is help your suppliers to show their performance and also what is the additional investment you are doing so that they can either help you with the terms, credit terms or margin and other things. So when we go and ask them without showing their performance, it becomes a pure negotiation and the rebates, which becomes a one-way street. Here is a snapshot of how one distributor has put this example. So all the dots that you see on the right-hand side is a supplier for this distributor. After they have done analysis, you can see the bubble size varies. The larger the bubble, the higher the supplier size, the spend that they are doing with you. So obviously this particular supplier is enlarged. Now you know, since we discussed 4 dimensions, you see the color code. Again, using a traffic signal light example, you would know directly what is the biggest challenge with this distributor, which is supply chain profitability. So what does that mean? Because you may be stocking more inventory on their product line. As a result, your GIMROI, gross margin return on inventory investment, is relatively low. As a result, they are falling into this lower quadrant. So can we talk to them about their supply chain performance? How many days? The lead time is 25 days. Can they bring that little bit down? Or can they compensate you on the cost of goods sold? So this way, you are communicating to your supplier, not in anecdotes, but you are showing their performance. And also what it does is, it tells the supplier, hey, look at other suppliers who are performing well. You are not showing their confidential information, but you are telling them your competitive suppliers are performing far better than yourself. So that becomes an indirect advantage for you to communicate your performance and develop the channel in a collaborative manner. One final example is, again, each dot is a supplier here. This distributor wanted to internally review and give their product manager a more prescriptive approach. What they did is, you can see in the 4 quadrant, I am just highlighting into the L-shaped category. What they did is, they said, we are going to come up with 3 different strategies. The first one is, we are going to examine some of the suppliers and develop them into a core category. So that is this blue group you see. So I want to develop there as a future core. And I want to eliminate some of the suppliers. You see the red color ones, they want to eliminate because it just creates the noise and you are not getting the leverage. And finally, the green ones is the one I want to expand them into the core category. So this becomes as an internal tool for a distributor. It becomes a very powerful tool for you to communicate in a more objective manner. So now that we have seen what you can do from the product side, supplier side, and customer side, as Pradip mentioned, some of these best practices are short term that you can go and put to use after this webinar, and some of them requires a step-based approach, but essentially you would get as a building block. But you may have heard about these best practices in the past. One of the things that we are seeing across our clients is a lot of them know about these best practices. They heard about it. They understand just measuring customer profitability is not enough. You need to go to the cost to serve. But the challenge in distribution is a lot of times we do not move from knowing to the doing category. What does that mean? Because we know these best practices, but we have never put to use. So we have done a research last year to identify why certain distributors put into action while others don't, even though they know the details of how to do it. We identified 4 mental blocks that kind of stops distributors from implementing things. And more common reasons that they cite is the timeline. We don't have a time, a lot of things are going on currently. Or the budget aspect where they talk about it, we have not budgeted for this year. Or they may say, oh, we don't have the people, everybody's plate is already full. Or some of the distributors say, okay, hey, we are already profitable, we are growing, why do we need to do these things? So you hear one or the other, I am sure internally or from your other peer group you would have heard. But what we identified from the top quartile distributors, some of them who are able to go beyond these reasons is, this is what they told us. What they said is, yes, we don't have the timeline, but we don't have to take a big bang approach. Rather, they change the mindset. Okay, why can we take one product group? Can we just take all the sealants, hydraulic, pneumatic, and mechanical? Let's do the product stratification for just one product category and see what it comes out. Does it make sense for our company? They just did it themselves internally, try to see whether it makes sense or not. Because it is not a detailed project, but they want to go and do this pilot approach. That is how they initially proven the value internally. The second thing is, a lot of times when people hear about analytics, they think that it is a very big expenditure because that is an impression left because of ERP and CRM and other things where you have to write a 6-digit big check to get those tools. But in the current environment of a lot of technology advancements, especially in the cloud technology and a couple of other powerful analytical tools that are available to distributors at a much affordable price, considering those, it is not a 6-digit figure or big capital expenditure. Rather, it is a small, quick project like the pilot project that you can explore with the additional technology, or even in Excel for that matter. You can try some of this and realize these quick wins without as a separate lot of project. And the final one is we are already profitable. That is the one that sometimes as a blind spot distributors get tripped. The reason is, yes, in the past all those things worked, but now think about how much pricing and product information our customers already know before calling us, our salespeople. Or think about the next generation of the future talent that you are bringing into the company. Your 20-year-old salesperson may not need these analytical tools, but the people you are hiring and developing today, they may need to think in a different way. And as a company, we need to provide those tools. So that was the reason told by one of the industrial distributor why they are developing these things. So which is essentially playing to win in the future. So I just want to throw these few mental blocks and how distributors came across, because as a leader who you are attending in your organization today's webinar, we definitely want to enable you by sharing these things which you may be trying to overcome in your organization as well. With that, we will wrap up as 4 quick wins that you have seen from product, customer, and supplier perspective. Now we will take questions. Janet?
If you have any questions, go ahead and type them in either the chat box or the Q&A box, and we'll get them answered for you. Do you have contact information that you can put up on the screen?
Yes.
There we go. So if you have questions, we don't want to keep you too long on this Friday. Oh, we have a question. How does org go about implementing in phased approach?
Senthil, you want to take that?
Jen, can you read the question again, Jen? Sorry.
How does org go about implementing in phased approach?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I will chime in, Pradip. Yeah, please feel free. And so what we do is typically a pilot-based approach is depending on, like suppose for instance, we are doing just a customer stratification. A pilot-based approach is, you can say, a 20-week pilot approach. For instance, we are working with an industrial distributor in Northeast who have taken customer stratification as a primary focus. And in the first few weeks, we try to understand what is the baseline of what they are doing and how they are classifying customers. And all we need is a transactional data, which comes from your ERP or sales order transactions. That is the basic data required to come up with the first round of analysis in a couple of weeks once you sort out these data requirements. Typically, it is done by market segment or product group. But the idea here is to bring that preliminary results to a cross-functional team in a quick manner in the, let's say, in the 6th week or so. But what makes this whole thing as effective is not just creating that analytics, but helping salespeople or internal salespeople to consume this information. What we do is we take that result and convert them into a role-based playbooks. All it means is, if I am a salesperson, all I want to know is who are the top 3 accounts that I need to work for next quarter. So how do you distill that information and give that playbook to salesperson so that they can go for those 3 customer and a specific product gaps that be identified. So many playbooks are created so that salespeople are not overwhelmed to see the whole information. Rather, they are taking a bite-sized approach. And we help them from the week 8 to week 15 through the micro learning approach. All it means is every other week they come online and they share the stories of how they applied or what is the challenge, and we learn from the peer group, and we try to reinforce and also adapt our playbook based approach so that salespeople can quickly apply that and get the feedback. At the end of the pilot, they can evaluate the results, the return on investment in terms of gross margin, revenue growth, share of wallet, whatever that may means to the company. Then based on that, they can decide how they want to go post-pilot in a more gradual approach, implementing that and rolling out across the organization. Go ahead, Pradip.
No, Senthil, I think that's pretty comprehensive. And as long as, Marty, as long as you can look at this as not more than a two-hour commitment every week, if you just break it down to those pieces, it's a lot easier. People can really get accustomed to the bandwidth. So the smaller your sample sizes, a product category or a couple of product categories, and then a set of customers, even you can just start with a set of customers and product categories. Getting that quick win and building that confidence is the first step. Take a small step, over the first few weeks. So once you do it for one product category, just replicating across multiple categories becomes straightforward. And often we've seen companies use Excel, Microsoft Excel, because you could do a lot with it and people really like looking at those opportunities pretty quickly. And we've seen majority of our clients take Excel group of products. They let the salespeople focus on like 5 to 10 customers, and it is quick. As long as you keep it to 2 hours a week, we've seen the success to be much higher.
Okay, Stephanie had asked about whether the PowerPoint would be available. After the presentation, Pradip and Senthil are going to send me a PDF, which I can make available to the attendees, as well as a recording of this webinar will be posted probably Monday or Tuesday of next week. Do we have any additional questions? All right, so if you do have questions, their email addresses are on the screen, so you can email them separately, or if you email me, info@isd.org, we can get an answer to you. We would like to thank Senthil and Pradip for this presentation today. We would also like to thank those of you on this call for your participation. A recording of this session will be available online within the next week or so. We will also be sending you via email a link to a short program evaluation. Your feedback is important to us. We hope you will take a few minutes to complete the evaluation. This concludes our presentation. Have a good day. Happy Valentine's Day tonight with those you love, and a great weekend. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.